Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Great episode, but before I get into my review, if you're new to this channel, hello and welcome. I summarize and review the latest Sensual Kapımı episodes, say what I like, what I didn't like, what I noticed, what I think might happen next. If you like these kinds of videos, like, comment, share, but most importantly subscribe so we can meet on a weekly basis. As always, let's talk about the side storylines before we get into the Eda and Serkan storyline. First we have Fifi and Erdem. So in this episode, Erdem finally makes the move, calls Fifi and invites her to dinner, but she tells him to have dinner at Ayfer's. And when they're there, he didn't really expect it to be a group date because Ferit, Jaren, Ayfer and Melek are also there, and he wasn't really amused and pleased by that because he really wanted to have a date only with Fifi. It was also funny when Engin and the majority of the company found out that Erdem was sleeping in the company. It was just hilarious, that whole scene of them watching the CCTV footage and then finding out all those dirty little secrets. So Erdem sleeping over, Engin and Pırıl kissing, so everybody knows that they're an item, and then Efe kind of justifying and saying, well look, Selin printed out the plans, took them, Leyla and Erdem printed out the plans and took them, and I printed out the plans and took them. So there's nothing really bad that happened there because he was still trying to cover his tracks kind of. But anyways, I will get to that later. So I think that's all that happened with Erdem, and we can move on to Pırıl and Engin. So as I already said, the company knows that Engin and Pırıl are together, and it was just so hilarious when Engin tried to shut down the CCTV footage so nobody can watch it further, but they already saw. Pırıl is so embarrassed that everybody knows now that they're together, and Engin is like, well, other people are together as well, and she's like, well, they married after that, so that's a different story. And that's when it clicks for Engin, and is like, do you know how to cook? Do you want to live together? Should we get married? And she's so shocked that she drops her necklace, and I think the clasp was a ring, or there was a ring on the necklace or something like that, because when Engin bows down, he gets on his knee and is kind of like proposing, and she's like, oh no, that's way too quick, and he's like, well then be my partner, let's move in together. So it was kind of adorable to see him like that, and she accepts to move in with him and take the next step in the relationship. And then when they get to his place, she's so shocked by the mess, so she doesn't want to stay there. And later in the episode, she tells him to come home a little bit later because she has a surprise for him. But because that day there's a huge soccer match, he thinks that she wants to watch it with him, so he gets prepared with chips and shirts and whatever and comes home. But she cleaned the whole house and put some yoga mats there because her surprise was to do yoga together, and he's so confused, and it's just so hilarious to watch them. And then that yoga scene, so he's watching the match on TV, but she's doing her yoga exercises right in front of the TV. It was just so hilarious, and them fighting about it. Oh my god, I love it. Then we also have Ayfer finding out from Fifi that Serkan was actually the one who recommended the flower shop to that client. Fifi only found out from the client, so Fifi tried to hide it from Ayfer, but Ayfer found out in the end from Fifi, then confronted Serkan about it and told him that she's only doing that because she likes the woman, she likes the client, so she's only doing that because of that, and Eda wouldn't accept her doing that if she knew that Serkan was the one behind it. So he's like, I only did it because we were looking for a flower shop anyways, blah blah blah, trying to find a reason why he did it, and then tells her to keep it a secret from Eda. Then we have Alptekin. Alptekin tried to give some advice to Serkan when he found out about the accident that happened, and Serkan is blocking everything and is like, now that it happened to me as well, do you think that we're even? Well, blah blah blah. So he's again pushing Alptekin away. I felt kind of bad for Alptekin, but at the same time I'm like, you could have done a better job at it. You could have started the conversation differently. And he also had a minor fight with Erdem because Erdem got really angry at Alptekin because there's again this coldness between him and Serkan, and then he's like, well, I did it because of you, I sent him away because of you, because you weren't able to take care of him, you were constantly crying, blah blah blah, so I'm sick of being the one who's at at fault, who's always blamed at. You should take responsibility for the things that you did in the past. So that's kind of what gets Erdem going and motivates her even more to go outside, to go past the gates. And that's when Eda helps her with it. So Ayfer gives Eda the idea to give her something to drink so it relaxes her, because Erdem was very all over the place because Serkan moved out and her safe place crumbled. So she's very sad about it, and when Serkan also cancels on her having breakfast together, she gets even more upset. And that's when Eda comes in, tells Seyfi to put 1 drop of that thing in 3 glasses of water, but he put 3 spoonfuls of it in or something like that. Like, he overdosed majorly. So Erdem is like high. She's so, I don't know how to describe it, not really drunk, but she's there physically, but mentally she's partly somewhere else. And it was just so funny to see her like that. Then she takes out a car that was so dusty, and I think it was her old car, and then they go for a drive. And I really enjoyed seeing her enjoying herself, seeing the city with new eyes, seeing that so much has changed since she's been lost out. And then she wants to see the sea, and then she wants to go to Serkan's place. And at first Eda was blocking it, but then she's like, no, come on, let's go to my son. So she brings Erdem to Serkan. Serkan is very confused. What is Erdem doing there? But then in the end, he thanks Eda for doing such a miracle, and the rest of that scene I will talk later about. Then we have Jaren and Ferit. So in this episode, you could really see that Jaren was starting to have feelings for Ferit. I mean, she already showed it in last episode, but he was still kind of friend zoning her. And they had dinner together, but he just wanted to have a friend to talk to because he already made a reservation, because he wanted to talk about business with her, because he was scared they were getting sued by Emre. But that didn't happen, so he was like, well, let's not waste this reservation. And she didn't like this attitude, and also the answers he gave her about Selin. So she fakes having a meeting and she forgot about it, so she goes. When she arrives home, she talks to Fifi and Melek, and they kind of motivate her and push her to call Ferit to confess her feelings to him and just see what his answer is. But she chickens out the last minute and then says, well, she wanted to talk about business, about the contract, blah blah blah. And he's like, no, Selin is already taking care of it. So she's like, again, Selin, it's always about Selin, Selin, Selin. So she gets really frustrated. The next day she tries to work from the flower shop. Ferit calls her, what's up, did he upset her? And she's like, well, you keep misunderstanding me. So I was like, okay, I mean, it's great that she finally told him that she's being misunderstood by him, but I thought it was so adorable when he appeared at Ayfer's flower shop and told Jaren that this flower shop got recommended to him because everybody likes it, and she's looking for Ayfer actually. So he goes to her and then tells Ayfer if she could make a flower bouquet for a person who's very important to him, and it's kind of an apology bouquet. And he's also written a note, and it was just so adorable. And then he passes the time with Jaren till Ayfer finishes. So Ayfer brings the flowers, and then they talk a little bit more, and Ayfer invites Ferit for dinner, and he's like, no, I have work to do. Then she tells Jaren to come for dinner. She's like, no, I have work to do. But then in the end, she manages to convince both of them to go and have dinner at her place. So that's the group dinner date they have with Erdem, Fifi, Melek and Ayfer. Then Ferit stands up, wants to go, and Jaren is like, well, you forgot the flowers. And he's like, I didn't, and just walks off. And it was just so adorable. I mean, I don't know, I like Ferit now as much as I hated him back then. I kind of like him, how he behaves with Jaren, so I'm really excited to see what happens next in their relationship. And then her reading the note where he's written something like, I'm sorry that I hurt you. It was just so adorable, and I thought it was just amazing. Then at dinner, Ayfer is trying to interrogate Ferit. He answers the questions that he really wants to find his soulmate, kind of, and he thought he did, but he didn't in the end. And then in the end, when Erdem and Ferit go, Jaren is really excited and asking Ayfer what she thinks about Ferit, and she tells Jaren that he's a very nice guy, but what she could get from him is that he's not really over his breakup with Selin, so he needs more time. And that's just what I I said in my previous reviews as well. Jaren is already having feelings, and the answer that Ifa gave her is not the answer that she was looking for. Then we have Selin. So Selin was kind of the main plot point in this episode, but at the same time we didn't get to see her that much. So she was dealing with all the media outlets about this whole construction mistake, and she doesn't like that Eda is actually suspicious of her and blaming her for the mistake. And Serkan is actually on Selin's side. He doesn't believe that Selin would be capable of doing that, and Eda is digging around blaming Selin. And then when Selin was having this conversation with Efe about who is the one who did it, Selin is asking Efe, was it you? And he's like, no, why would I do something like that if I'm a partner in this company? So he was trying to hide what he did. And then Selin gets a call that her apartment or house is flooded because a pipe broke. So she gets the information that there's a free house and she can move in there for a couple of days till everything is repaired. But that house is already the house where Serkan moved in. So he actually moved in early, and when Aydan, Seyfi and Eda are at Serkan's place, Selin is trying to get in and is very confused why everybody is there. Selin explains herself that somebody told her that this place is empty and she can stay here, blah blah blah. Serkan is like, okay, no problem. There are a lot of rooms that are empty, so you can stay over there. Eda didn't like that response because she already doesn't like that Selin is being protected by Serkan in this whole who sabotaged the project. And Aydan made coffee in that special Eda mug. Aydan gives the coffee mug to Selin. It turns red in Selin's hand. Eda doesn't like to see the mug in Selin's hand, and especially because it's red. Seyfi sees her reaction, takes the mug, but in his hands it's green, and then when Ayfer takes it, it's blue, and then Eda takes it from Ayfer and it turns red really quickly, and Serkan likes that it's turning red in her hands, but then it quickly switches to black because Eda sees him seeing the mug, so she doesn't like that. So it turned from love in Selin's hand to green. I don't know where the green came from, to blue, which is excited in Aydan's hands, to red in Eda's hands, but then switching to black, which means upset, also in Eda's hands. So I kind of understand that Eda is upset by Selin living with Serkan at his new place. But on the other hand, I'm like, Serkan told you that he never loved Selin and they're friends since forever. So I don't know, why are you this upset? You should trust Serkan. I think Eda exaggerated a lot of times in this episode. Then we have Efe, who's desperately trying to make it up to Serkan and his friend. So he calls his friend, tries to convince him not to sue Serkan. So he manages that Emre doesn't sue Serkan anymore. Serkan is very suspicious of Efe and is kind of targeting Efe in this whole sabotaging scheme. So Eda is blaming Selin, Serkan is blaming Efe. Efe is trying to hide his tracks, but Serkan told Leyla to look for the memory card of the printer to look who printed what at what time. Serkan told Pırıl to look at the memory card. Pırıl told him that the footage or the data was deleted and you can't get it back. So Serkan is telling her, let's get into a meeting where everybody is, just lie and tell everybody that you're looking at the memory card and you will find out very very soon who did it. During that meeting, Efe was pooping his pants, like almost literally, and Serkan was enforcing all of that, being like, well, we will soon find it out, blah blah blah. Oh, also, when Efe told Serkan that Emre is not suing them anymore or giving them more time, Serkan is very suspicious and doesn't really believe him, so he calls Emre, then suggests to Emre that he will take all the costs of the reconstruction of their roof because Serkan still doesn't have proof that Efe did it. He wants to invite Efe for dinner, but that's what I'm going to talk later about. So I do think we can now move on to the Eda and Serkan storyline. So we start right where we ended. Eda desperately trying to convince Serkan that it wasn't his mistake and that she would do anything to find out where this mistake come from, who did it, and that it wasn't his fault, that his drawings didn't have the mistake. So she's looking up all the plans, like the plans that went to the construction site and the plans that they had, and they're looking at it, and then she's like, well, let me look at the plans on your computer. So she needs the password, and the password is actually the coordinate of the star he gifted Eda, and she notices it and he's very awkward, and then he is like, well, I forgot to change it, I didn't have time, and she's like, and that's when she sees that his plans were right and the measurements or the numbers were different from the numbers that were on the plans that went to the construction site. So that's proof that it wasn't Serkan's fault and it was actually something that happened later in the process. So that's when Serkan is trying to figure out who might have been the person, and then they go through everybody and Eda's like, well, who might have printed it? So Serkan is like, well, only Leyla and Erdem were here. Eda is looking at Erdem. Erdem is really awkward, being like, oh my god, they're looking at me, what's happening, blah blah blah. He gets really nervous, and Serkan is like, Erdem, he's not capable of doing that, blah blah blah. So that's when they go through Pırıl and Engin. They couldn't have done that, and then Eda is like, well, Selin, and Serkan is like, no, it must have been Efim. So both of them are kind of having an argument, and Eda is like, well, I'm going to prove to you that it was Selin, and Serkan is like, well, she's not the one, I believe it's Efim. So that's when Eda is really charging for Selin and really targeting her, trying to find all the hints. She's even asking Engin and Pırıl if Selin has some kind of education in the architectural world, and they say no, only management. So she doesn't really know what to do with the plan. Then we have the scene where Selin already noticing that Eda is suspecting her. So Selin confronts Eda. Eda is like, well, there is this love between you and Serkan, blah blah blah. So she's kind of bringing the past into this problem, and I believe because she doesn't like Selin because of what happened in the past between Selin and Serkan and blah blah blah, I think that's the reason why she's so focused on it being Selin. So Ferit comes as well, witnesses everything. Serkan also comes, sees the fight, and tells Eda to back off, that it's not Selin that did it. Eda is trying to explain herself, getting more and more angry, and Serkan is like, back off, it wasn't Selin. So in that moment, Eda saw that Serkan was protecting Selin, and she didn't like it. She was close to tears, she was so angry. And then Ferit also protecting Selin, saying that she would never do that. Yes, he agrees with Eda that there are hurt feelings between her and Serkan and all the things that happened in the past, but he doesn't think that Selin would be capable of hurting the company or them that much. Eda doesn't really like that. Why is Selin being protected by both of them, even though there are hurt feelings between all three of them? Then we have the scene where Serkan tries to talk to Eda, and she's like, well, you don't value me, blah blah blah. And I was like, oh my god, Eda, you're being just so frustrating. Like, there were times where I'm like, okay, you have the right to react like that, but then she overdid it, and it was just so frustrating. That's also where Eda asks him, what did I do to deserve a behavior from you like this, blah blah blah. And then Serkan is like, well, I never loved Selin. And Eda is like, well, you were scared of a girl who loved you more than anything else. So she was referring to herself, and he didn't have an answer. I was like, oh my god, like seriously. I mean, of course it's true, but I'm like, girl, he loves you more than you love him, and you just don't know it because of this stupid secret. And when you know it, you will finally understand his actions. Because what I forgot to say is that Ida really wants to tell Eda the secret, because she sees how much Serkan is hurting and also how much Eda is hurting. So she thinks that when she tells her the truth, of course Eda will be very angry, doesn't want to have anything to do with them anymore, but over time she will get past that sadness and anger, and there's going to be love again. Then we have this library scene. So Eda is back at university. She's trying to work on the project in the library, and that's the scene we got to see before the episode. He's kind of being all smooth and trying to get close to her and stuff like that. I really like that. But what I didn't like was her being so passive aggressive, so loud, screaming like that, and he's like, calm down, just talk a little bit quiet, we're in the library, just don't get angry like that. And there were moments when she got really affected by Serkan's closeness, but yeah, she got really angry with him. She might get kicked out of the library, blah blah blah. In the end, they did get kicked out of the library, and I'm like, well, it's just because of you, because you were screaming like that. Anyways, they go for a walk, and he notices that she's a little bit cold, so he gives her his scarf, which I thought was really adorable. But that walk kind of reminded me of the walk that happened in Dolunay. Anyways, he kind of offers her to go to his place or something like that, and she's not really interested to see where his new place is, blah blah blah, because in the library she gets really angry why she didn't know that he already moved out. And I'm like, well, you don't want to talk about personal things with him, so why would he tell you that he found a new place? But anyways, in the end, she agrees to go to his new place, and while he's preparing something to drink, she goes to the shelf, finds a book, and actually finds their engagement photo. And I'm like, didn't Serkan put that picture into the box that she then threw away at the company? Because later he's also unpacking that globe thing that she gifted him for his birthday. So I'm like very confused, because at the beginning of the episode, Seifi is kind of awkward packing the box, being like, well, maybe I should send it to Serkan or something like that. So did Seifi pick all those things back out of the trash, or did Serkan pick them out from the trash? Like, I was very confused how these things landed back at Serkan's place. Anyways, they work on the plans together, and then they compliment each other. Oh, Efe saw the talent in you, blah blah blah, you're so talented. Her being like, oh, with just a few strokes you changed the whole plan, blah blah blah. Ivan is calling Eda that she should come home, blah blah blah, so she goes. At the company, Efe is trying to get some information from Eda and asking Eda who Serkan is suspecting, and she's like, well, I don't know. But then she asks Efe to dinner. Oh, I forgot a really funny scene at the beginning of the episode. Selin was going over something with Serkan, or wanted to, just for 5 minutes, and he's like, no, I'm busy, I don't have time. Eda comes in and he's like, do you have 10 minutes because I want to show you something? He's like, yeah, sure. And I was like, oh my god, really? And Selin was still there. I loved it. Anyways, Serkan is telling her that he plans on having a dinner with Efe, where Efe is going to confess everything he did. Eda is like, no, you're kind of late, because I'm actually going with Efe, and Serkan is not allowing it, only under one condition. She has to have her phone turned on so he can actually listen to their conversation. And that's when they get really close, and there's almost a kiss, and I was like, oh my god. Then we have this whole dinner scene happening. So Eda is actually calling Serkan. Serkan is listening to their conversation. Eda is talking a little bit badly on purpose about Serkan, so for him to hear that. And then we have Efe complimenting Eda. Serkan being there with Selin, because she offered that she would tag along so that it wouldn't be too obvious for him to be alone at the table. Serkan's reactions were amazing. I love them so much, because they were angry Serkan, they were jealous Serkan. It was just amazing to watch all his reactions. But then Efe is like, well, I don't know what's the problem with me, let's call him. So he's calling Serkan, but Serkan is on the phone with Eda, so there's a busy line, so Efe can't get through to Serkan. Eda hangs up on Serkan. Serkan doesn't like that, because he doesn't know what they're talking about. Efe is asking Eda, well, who's Serkan suspecting? Eda says, you? I don't know. Efe tells her that there's something he wants to tell Serkan. Efe's phone rings. He picks up. Serkan signs to Eda to come and talk to him. She's telling him that she's on the right track, that she did her part, blah blah blah. She got all the information, and that Efe wants to talk to both of them the next day. He tells her, you know what, I will get a taxi for Selin. She goes, I will fake coming to pick you up. Eda is not very amused by that, and and during that conversation she kept making Serkan very jealous. When Eda is walking past Selin takes the moment and is like, what's your problem with me? And Eda is like, well, I don't like you, blah blah blah. Serkan is always in the middle because Selin is like, is it about Serkan? And Eda is like, yes, it's always about Serkan, blah blah blah. So they're having a minor disagreement. Anyways, Eda goes back to Efe. Serkan goes with Selin. Eda sees them, asks for the bill. Efe wants to pay. She's like, no, I'm taking it because we're partners, blah blah blah. Anyway, Serkan comes, says that he wants to pick up Eda because he wants to talk to her or something like that. Efe is telling Serkan, well, I called you but your line was busy and I wanted to talk to you about something. And Serkan is like, well, okay, let's talk. So I have to confess, I changed the numbers. And he's actually confessing, he's apologizing even, and told Serkan that he already told Emre about this incident and that he's trying to do everything possible to rectify his mistake. Serkan's response is that he should look for a new partner. That's when Eda comes in and suggests to continue this conversation the next day because this is not the place to talk about business like that. When Efe goes, Serkan tells Eda that she should look for a new job because Efe Akman doesn't exist for them anymore. And when she asks him if he believed Efe, he's like, not a single word. Serkan wants to take Eda home, but she's like, no, I don't want to, blah blah blah. She's starting to make a scene once again. And I'm like, oh my god, really? Poor Serkan, because he keeps telling her, just don't make a scene, keep quiet. And she's like, no, I don't want that, blah blah blah. And Eda is like, go back to Selin, she's waiting for you at your place and you're just jealous, blah blah blah. So just rubbish. And Serkan is like, why would I be jealous? And Eda is like, oh, you're not? Well, then you're going to see a new Eda from now on. And I was like, and that's the end. Like I said in my last review, Efe is going to backtrack, which he already did. He even apologized. So I'm really interested to see what's going to happen next, because in this episode he already called the mystery person and said that he will make it up, kind of. So I'm really interested to see when this mystery person will appear. I do think that it's still going to take a couple of more episodes, but we're going to see them very, very soon. If the mystery person is Eda's grandma, then I do think that incident will kind of bring them back together, kind of closer. Or maybe that's also the time when Eda will find out about the secret, what happened to her parents, and that it was actually Altekin and that Serkan knows, blah blah blah. As of me filming this now, there's no new trailer, so I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just saying what I think might happen next. So I really do hope that we will get to see more of Ferit and Jaren, and Ferit letting his guard down. Also Erdem and Fifi getting closer maybe. I do think that next episode will be very frustrating once again, with Eda changing her attitude towards Serkan. But I do think that she will visit him more often because she needs to work on this project with him. So yeah, I do think that they will get closer, but she will block it out kind of. And is there anything else? I don't think so. I hope I mentioned everything. I hope I didn't forget anything. And if you still like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this episode. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Ring that bell to be notified whenever I post something, and I will see you next time.